and this is Sharing the Road to Emmaus, our call to evangelize each other. Our bishops put together a few decades back the idea, coming from Pope John Paul II, of the new evangelization. This is a brilliant idea. We need to rejuvenate evangelization. The trick is new made it sound, well, tricky. It made it sound different. The reality is evangelization is very simple. And if we drop the new, it becomes very simple. It's just evangelization. What is evangelization? Why is it so simple? And why is it so hard? Well, we'll get to that, and the road to Emmaus helps shed light on it. Evangelization is very simple. Tell the story of Jesus in your life. Now, in order to tell the story of Jesus in your life, we need to reach a point where Jesus is so compelling in our life that we automatically share our story of Jesus. To do that, sometimes we need to intentionally look for where is Jesus in my life and intentionally share our story of how Jesus is in our life. And that deepens our own journey. We're evangelizing ourselves when we share our story of Jesus in our life with others. But it's really this simple. If we think about it, all the Gospels, all the epistles, every saint, every story of the saints, the lives of the saints, they've all simply told the story of Jesus in their life. So evangelization is the timeless love story of Jesus in our life, but we tell it here and now. And the lure, the idea of the new evangelization is let's use these new tools of technology, like video, like the internet, like social media, to tell the timeless love story. But we kind of forgot the timeless love story. And part of the reason we've forgotten that is we're going through a global change of our church because of Vatican II. We're rediscovering what is our timeless love story. So we've got global change, we've got our personal journey of how we run towards Jesus, and we've got a massive societal changes in terms of societies running away from God, denying God. And that's been happening for roughly 500 years. In terms of very intentional running away. So we're going to use the story of Jesus on the road to Emmaus, the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, to explore how is it we're called to evangelize each other. Because before we can evangelize outward, we have to be evangelized inward. The journey of our soul to fall in love with Jesus, to be open to getting sin out of the way so that I am free to experience Jesus in my life. That's the first evangelization that has to happen. And the Gospels call us, through Matthew 18, among many others, Jesus calls us in Matthew 18 to, when a brother sins against you, go and share with him his fault. That's not judging in the sense of we're deciding the state of their eternal soul. It's identifying, wait, we're all wanting to run towards Jesus. We're on the road to Emmaus. What are we messing up? Sin makes us deaf, blind, dumb, and stupid. We can't see Jesus. What happens when we can't see Jesus? We can't enter into the love story. The love story with Jesus requires us to be fully participating, to fully and actively choose Jesus. So let's look into the story of the road to Emmaus. Fear made me do it. We're going to read the first part section of the story, and then we're going to break it open. And this is Luke chapter 24, and verses 13. Initially, I'll just read through 25, and then I'll read through 35. Now, that very day, the day that Jesus rose, Easter Sunday, two of them were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus, and they were conversing about all the things that had occurred. And it happened that while they were conversing and debating, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped, looking downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, said to him in reply, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know of the things that have taken place there in these days?" And he replied to them, "What sort of things?" They said to him, "The things that happened to Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. How our chief priests and rulers both handed him over to a sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since this took place. Some women from our group, however, have astounded us. They were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body. They came back and reported that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who announced that he was alive. Then some of those with us went to the tomb and found things just as the women had described, but him they did not see." And he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart to believe all that the prophets spoke." So here we have an amazing example of how our fear gets in the way of us entering into the love story with Jesus, because we are those two disciples. We are also Jesus when we're revealing Jesus to others. So we're all 3 characters, all 3 people in this story in different ways at different times. The first piece, however, is fear made me do it. This gospel reveals the power of fear to prevent us from loving Jesus, from sharing with the world the breath of God breathed into us at our conception. Fear itself is not a sin, but fear is the excuse of all sin. Fear that the serpent was right, that God isn't who God is. Fear prevents us from having faith, being open to receiving the gift of faith. Fear makes us blind, so when we encounter Jesus, we don't recognize him. In fact, we so much don't recognize him that we tell him, "You must be the only person who doesn't know what's going on." Just like these 2 disciples. It's also important to note Jesus meets them on the road to Emmaus, and he starts to engage them. He asks them questions. I'd mentioned Vatican II and how much it has changed our global awareness as a church, our global culture as a church. And the first change that it did is it reignited the need for relationship. That God is love, God is relationship. And that's what Jesus is doing here on the road to Emmaus. He's igniting that relationship. He's entering into questions. Where are you now? I am here with you. You don't see me yet. Where are you? What's your story? And we're called as a church to always listen to the story of those in our pastoral care, including ourselves? What's my own story? What's the story of my fellow deacons, fellow priests and bishops? Everybody on the journey as we move as the church towards Christ. So we're blind to Jesus because of our own sin. Jesus names this. This is the second piece of what's happened since Vatican II, is relationship by itself is not enough. Relationship is limited by the fallen world. So all creation fell, and there's this limit, this chasm between us, creation, and God, and fullness of creation and the vision of creation God gave us. And we can't see beyond that. We're fallen. Relationship, if all we settle for is relationship, we're stuck in the fallen world. So as evangelizers, we're called to first evangelize ourselves. Relationship is not enough. We have to hold ourselves humbly, boldly accountable to God revealed, God's authority revealed, God's love revealed, God's truth revealed. And that's right. And to do that, we have to hear Jesus say to us, "Oh, how foolish you are. Oh, how blind you are. Oh, how desperate you are to fully see and understand everything you just described to me in its full, proper context, which isn't limited by this fallen world. It's so much more that only God can give us." So Jesus says, "Walk with me." And this is what we'll read the rest of the gospel now and then open it up. Jesus says, "Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them what referred to him in all the scriptures. As they approached the village to which they were going, he gave the impression that he was going on farther. But they urged him, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. And it happened that while he was with them at table, he took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to them. With that their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the scriptures to us?" So they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, where they found gathered together the 11 and those with them, who were saying, "The Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon." Then the two recounted what had taken place on the way, and how he was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. So Jesus shares the journey with them after inviting and challenging them to ward right relationship. But that's not enough. We can't just say, "Oh, how foolish you are, here's the catechism. Oh, how foolish you are, here are the scriptures. Oh, how foolish you are, here's what the church teaching is." That's not enough. We have to have what's right with relationship. Because without relationship, there is no love story. And without what's right, there's no accountability to how do we choose humble obedience to Jesus and get beyond the fallen world. Only by Christ's grace can we do that. We have to open our hearts to receive the gifts Jesus has already given us, but we're too deaf, blind, dumb, and stupid to see. And this is the science of the soul. The science of the soul is revealed to us in the scriptures. It's revealed to us in the Gospels and fully by Jesus, and then opened up in different ways, describing it with different words through the epistles and through the lives and words of the saints and the teaching of the church ever since. The science of the soul. How is it? What's the biology of the soul? What's the physics of the soul? How do we journey and run towards Jesus, our sweet Christ? We have to walk with Jesus. Jesus walks with us, revealing the scriptures to us. Be challenged. We're hearing the story we know, but anew. We know the fallen world. Now we have to start seeing and hearing it and letting our hearts burn within us, because God's word is challenging us beyond our limitations and our experiences. That's evangelization. That's the love of Christ burning in us, yearning to come out, yearning to breathe God's breath given to us at our conception. And that's Jesus preparing us. Jesus through the church, Jesus through prayer, Jesus through the sacraments, Jesus through mindfulness, logic, and reason, and Jesus through companions, through each other, through the breath of God in each person who is also a disciple of Christ on the road to Emmaus. How am I, deaf, blind, dumb, and stupid? And simultaneously, how can I reveal Jesus to those sharing the journey with me? How is Jesus calling me to share the love story of Jesus in my life? And that reveals Jesus to me. I pray for, I need to be boldly humble. Jesus, I can't see you. Open my heart that I might receive what you've already given me, but I'm too deaf, blind, dumb, and stupid to see. So we reach a junction in the story. Jesus is going to go on. This is critical because in evangelization, remember, it's relationship, and it takes two people to be in relationship, but only one to break right relationship. We go on. Jesus is called to go forward. Jesus is going where Jesus is going to go. We're called to always run towards Christ. In sharing the journey with others, we don't go wherever they go. We go where Jesus calls us. Sometimes that means we go off. But if they call us back, we have to be open to, Jesus, are you calling us to reveal you to them in a different way? And we ourselves have to invite Jesus to stay with us. It's late. Stay with us. Something in me hungers, and I recognize that Jesus yearns to give it to me, to fill that hunger, to transform me. We're all sinners, and eventually we get there, but it takes the sacraments, it takes Christ in the sacraments, through the church. And so the disciples and we get it in two. Well, how many times do we have to get it? I take a lot more than two. But in this gospel, they get it in two. They see him. He's revealed to them in the breaking of the bread, the Eucharist. And suddenly, he's no longer there, seen by them, because they see him and experience him in them. And they know they're in the wrong place. They know, wait, I was deaf, blind, dumb, and stupid. I'm not supposed to be running away in fear. I'm supposed to be back in Jerusalem. I'm supposed to be sharing the love story of Jesus with the other disciples. We don't hear much more about these disciples. I don't think we hear anything more about them. The only thing we hear about him is this journey on the road to Emmaus, and it's our journey. It's the entire church's journey. The next video that I'll be doing is the science of shepherding the soul. It will be exploring some of the science of shepherding the soul. The idea here is, the preview is, Jesus gives to Peter after he founds the church, he gives Peter the power of the keys, the power to loose and bind on heaven as on earth the soul, matters of the soul. Only the church has that. Only the church has the power of the keys. So when people experience strife in their life, in the relationships of their lives, strife in relationship is always because of sin. So when people experience strife in their marriage, strife with their children, strife with friends, strife within themselves, that's ours as the church. We should never, ever refer out of the power of the church, away from the flock. It's ours. If we don't know how to handle it, we need to get bigger ourselves. We're limited by the fallen world, and we have to be evangelized to take up the authority of the power of the keys that God has given us. Evangelization starts with you. Please share this video with 3 friends and tell your story to Jesus in your life. And come and visit us, me, at credofamily.org. May God startle you with joy.